Let me restate tonight's topic. Certain sectors of agriculture are labor-intensive and rely heavily on immigrant workers. What is a fair and balanced immigration policy? I will now open the contest by asking that each contestant stand and, again, in voluntary order, give their 30-second opening statement.
Eisenhower once said, "Farming looks mighty easy when your plow's a pencil and you're 1,000 miles away from the cornfield." Legislators are looking at immigration reform without asking a single farmer, and it's having devastating effects on agriculture. My colleagues and I tonight will be looking at addressing what is fair and balanced immigration reform. And I look forward to our discussion, guys.
Immigration reform. If you're looking to fan the flames of a heated partisan debate, do nothing more than mention this topic. For years, this discussion has been riddled with rhetoric, and facts are not founded in it anymore. Today, I know as a group that is interested in agriculture, we can truly address the issues, cultivate ideas, and hopefully effectuate change.
Some issues in agriculture are like feeding in the dark. Not something you want to do, but sometimes necessary. The immigration policies right now immediately impact our food supply, our ability to produce, and the face of agriculture in the future. I would hope that tonight we as a panel can discuss the concerns of the farmers as they bring them to American Farm Bureau and as American Farm Bureau addresses them. I hope that we can shed light and possibly a new solution. I appreciate each of you tonight.
What an opportunity. I look out through the room here and I see hundreds of people, and we're all here under one envelope, and that's agriculture, either from the production side all the way to consumption and everywhere in between. And of course we have these issues that we have to deal with, and one of those is immigration and those issues that come with that, and the policies and procedures that we have to deal with to make that fair and informative for the farmers. And that's something I hope we look for tonight. Really good way to get into that we've got people from the Department of Agriculture office, myself, grassroots, and 4-H and extension, agriculture teachers, as well as those from the University of Kentucky as staff as well. So just again, thankful for the opportunity and look forward to a great discussion.
I would remind the contestants that the timekeeper is located in the front row and will show you cards to represent the time remaining. You may now begin your discussion.
Folks, it would, if we had adopted what Alabama has adopted in Senate Bill 56, this conference right here would be bleak, and there'd be a lot of children not having Christmas presents because of immigration reform. And so I'd like to take this opportunity at the current moment just to say, that we need this workforce. And how devastating could it be in your all's hometowns?
I think, you bring up a great point, Stacy. It's one of those things where agriculture, we all know, is really labor intensive, whether it be on the fruits and vegetable side, whether it be on tobacco production that we have here in the state of Kentucky. A lot of different ways you have to work at because it's a timely atmosphere, it's a timely environment, and getting those crops and produce up in a certain given time, which we've had some issues with, and maybe in southern states, as you mentioned in Alabama in the past, because of legislation. Stuff we definitely don't want to run into anymore and try to find some solutions for. When we look at immigration, those policies, it's got to be relevant to the farmer. It's got to be available to be applied, and it's got to be, fair, and it's got to be balanced and be able to be carried throughout, no matter what the environment is. Harrison County, one thing you mentioned on a public level, we've got several people who even have a pretty good fruit and vegetable producer, and he uses the H-2A program, visa program, to help provide that labor to get those up very successfully. However, after interviewing several people in our county that utilize H2A even, some of the mainstream comments that I hear is the paperwork burdensome. Paperwork that you see, and just the ability to try to streamline that, as well as the issue that we can't share. We can't share workers, and that sometimes provides situations as well. Janella, what about in Pulaski County? What are some things there?
Well, I think some of the concerns of the farmers are, in general, like you said, the paperwork. E-Verify is something that not being spoken of much right now, but the thought that it could be mandatory for them, and the implications as we stand right now are where our farmers can't question. They can't question. They might be prosecuted if they were. They can't question the workers. They need the workers. There's a mix of legal and illegal work going on right now in our county, and I'm sure, and that is all across our nation. And it's an issue that if we don't address from a political stance, and if we don't find a solution for, our farmers are going to struggle with that production. And that's whenever I give my introduction, the face of agriculture. There are some crops that I think we will see a reduction in production of because they are so labor intensive. And if we lose that labor force, or if we don't lose it, if we do not maintain a consistent labor force, I think that will be a significant issue, and I think that needs to be addressed. What about you, Mr. Gill? What do you think is going on in the area that you are particularly working in? I think that you could probably shed some light.
Well, currently within the United States, there's about 1 million workers working in production agriculture that are migrant. 70% of those workers are actually undocumented. So for us to talk about E-Verify today and put that into perspective, that is jeopardizing 70% of all total workers that are in production agriculture. That effect alone would have a $10 billion, it would affect $10 billion worth of productivity within the specialty crops. Like Mr. Harrelson said, or in Harrison County, Mike talked about how the fruit and vegetable production is flourishing, and it is within the state of Kentucky, and particularly the H2A program is so significant to Kentucky alone due to its high demand in tobacco. Right now, we have about 632 employers that have over 800 contracts, which equals to about 4,800 H2A workers. It is a necessity to Kentucky farmers to have the ability to use H2A, but this process has to be streamlined. It has to be the cumbersomeness of this and the burdensomeness of the bureaucracy that has enriched the H2A program has to be filtered down, and we truly have to streamline it. Has anyone really thought of any great ideas or things and regulations that are bogging down the H2A program?
Well, Vince, you bring up a good point. I was talking to Rick Alexander, who is earlier today. He's the individual who helps every single farmer in the state of Kentucky complete the application in Lexington, Kentucky. There's actually 5,500 documented H2A workers here in the state of Kentucky, he told me, with 550 farmers here in Kentucky that are participating in it. With that being said, you bring up E-Verify. I asked him, I said, what would happen in Kentucky if we were to pass an E-Verify law like Alabama did? He said it would be devastating. He said, we have no idea what it would do to the Kentucky economy. It would be crucial. Tobacco would be gone. And I think that's something that you bring up, E-Verify, that's a wonderful point. And so when we look at issues, I asked some participating farmers, Mark Pascal in Callaway County, who's one of the oldest participants in the H2A program. I worked for him when I was at Murray State, and Todd Clark over in Fayette County, one of the largest farmers using H2A employees. Both of them had similar situations where they said, the new changes with the paperwork, where you have to utilize if you have different times. This person comes in January, this one comes in February. You have to fill out 2 different applications. So that is one of them. But I tell you what, the people who are participating in H2A had a lot of positive things to say about it. I don't know if you heard that.
Well, and I don't really think that, I think that there is another option. We're talking about a lot about the H2A, and I am also hearing the positives. I'm sure you all are hearing those positives. The proposition in all of the discussion that I have with some of the local farmers in my county, as well as other counties that I've spoken with, some of the people that I've leaned on and called back and asked, because I know they have had immigrant workers, they speak of the issue of legalities. Let's go ahead and the immigrants who are illegal, what about the issue of legalizing their citizenship? What about providing the opportunity for them to be legal and them, not amnesty, but also of legalizing, because they're working hard, giving them the opportunity. There are concerns that becoming legal would, give them the option of opting out of agriculture. There's a concern there. So I would like to hear, maybe Mr. Myers, what is your views on the option of providing illegal immigrants the opportunity to become legal again?
It's a really great issue because, that's one that when you're talking about, and it's kind of touchy, and I'll bring up an instance when kind of doing some research about our topic. I read an article from the Huntington Post, and it was about 5 or 6 days ago. And it wasn't just a particular article that kind of interests me as much. I read the article and got some good points out of it, some concerns, especially with withdrawing through E-Verify. I mentioned those topics as well, and the shortage of 700,000 workers that would automatically be withdrawn if we went through with E-Verify, and the conditions that would cause with fruit and production prices and stuff like that maybe the general consumer would not know about. And I think that's the thing. And one thing we need to kind of consider, probably in the forefront, when we're looking at immigration and what is the role of agriculture in the workforce and how it, and the marketing and the educational side. Because, if we can fix a problem or maybe we can find a solution, and it's one that's certainly not short term, because I had a wonderful conversation today with Representative Tom McKee, and he just mentioned that, it's one that immigration reform has been looked at for years. And there's many more people that have looked into issues and looked into solutions, and it's not easy. But I think probably one way to look at it would be we need to try to educate the general public. It's really tough for us to win a battle, of coming up with a solution. I was reading down through the comments. There was probably 4,000 comments on this article. And that was the interesting part to me. Anything from we should send all illegals and everybody away, E-Verify should be here, and that's the way it should go, all the way to everybody should have a chance, and agriculture will fall apart without them if we don't have them. And I think we have to find some way to educate the general public on what the benefits and then what the factors are. Do you realize the cost of production and what vegetables and fruits going to go up, right, and our different commodities if we don't have these people and help with this labor? So, Stacey, what did you think?
Yeah, Mike, education is the key. What the average farmer in Kentucky is, 56, 57 years old? And my dad, and I don't want to upset him out here, but at 69 years old, he's not going to get online and fill out an H-2A application.
That's right.
So it starts with education. And I think that I shoot this question back to you, Mike, back to you, Janella, back to you, Vince. What in your areas are we doing to educate? We got to start young.
That's right.
Hey, can we teach lessons in the classroom?
Right.
Can we teach lessons in 4-H? Can we teach lessons from the commissioner's office that educate people? Hey, here's how you complete an application. Here's what fair and balanced immigration reform is. Here is what getting good employment. I mean, we talk about ag economics. Why don't we teach in our classroom? Hey guys, you got to factor in this labor into the equation. When I ask these farmers who have been doing H-2A, they say, hey, you got to have it. And I was talking to another man from Mr. Caraway from Callaway County, and he told me, he said, I would not give up my H-2A employees. I know they're going to come back every year, and they're loyal. They're going to work. Right. And so we got to start young. Right. We get more.
And that's whenever I discussed with some of the local farmers that I have, they were mentioning the fact that they have to advertise. That's part of the H-2A. You must advertise for domestic labor. And then if you propose that in the community, I spoke to one farmer, and he had advertised for 20 years now with the H-2A, and he'd never had domestic labor. So, and to point out on what you were talking about, Stacey, about the education part, I think fear itself prohibits a lot of people from following through. And if we educate about the fear of the unknown, possibly the fear of loss of labor or what have you, if we could bring that about. So, and you said through the Commissioner's Office, the Commissioner's Office, Department of Agriculture does lots for education. We see that from our standpoint in education. Vince, if you could shed some light maybe on what your opinion is and what you're seeing would make make progress in this area from the Commissioner's office.
Well, working in the Department of Agriculture, we are, strong advocates for every industry. And the H2A program, I'm glad we're addressing the situation today because it is a great vehicle for people in this state. It is so important for our tobacco farmers. However, though, I think we need to address what we talked about earlier, which was the undocumented workers, because right now, only 4% of all migrant workers in the nation are within the H2A program. So we're looking at only a small, specific amount of workers when we have big picture topics that we really have to address. And when we look at the undocumented workers, I applaud the American Farm Bureau, who right now has a task force that is presenting to their to the National Board of Directors, because they are coming up and wanting to greenlight specific policy to recommend to the United States Congress that will create a way for these 700,000 people that we could potentially lose if policies like E-Verify are made into law. So what we have to find is that the American Farm Bureau, coupled with the rural legislators across this country, can truly stop and thwart the attack that we have on these 700,000 people, because they are so important to our industry. But I know when we talk about undocumented workers, we have the education that we have to couple this with, because a lot of people do think that it's amnesty. And that's not what the American Farm Bureau supports. It supports a policy where they have a type of ag card, they are working towards a green card. If they show a commitment to agriculture and to that, they can adhere to this. But I think also to that, we also have to talk about the future flow. While we'll address the priority of the H2A program and the 700,000 undocumented workers, we now have to talk about the future flow. And Stacey, in academia, what is a theory that is good for the future flow? Because a lot of these people are dropping out of the workforce once they're in agriculture for a while.
Well, my dissertation, Vince, is written on multicultural competence. And one of the things that we have to focus on is trying to make sure that we prepare people on how to be culturally sensitive when trying to work in this shade of gray between illegal to legal. And so the multicultural competence is looking at attitude and awareness, belief and attitude. And there's tons of research that supports the way that farmers are treating their employees based upon that. In Kentucky, when I was talking to Mr. Alexander, he has very few issues where farmers in this state are mistreating their employees, even illegal. And that's a big issue. And so you were talking about issues, and that's great. One is moving from Department of Labor to Department of Agriculture. We have a big issue. Agriculture wants something in Department of Labor. I know that you mentioned that what American Farm Bureau was proposing. Unfortunately, that was supported by Mr. Romney, and during the election now, President Obama has already said that he would not put that into act. And so I know that Bob Stallman from American Farm Bureau has said, we're not going to put a Band-Aid on this, so we're going to make sure that we get it right. So I do think that we're going to see even more amendments and changes by the American Farm Bureau on that proposal.
Yeah, you guys both bring up great points, and I think certainly some things that I just kind of jotted down so I don't forget here. You brought up those Boswell figures earlier from Representative Congressional Relations from American Farm Bureau, 700,000 workers if you apply the E-Verify, and the fact that those immigrants, and those that aren't registered could cause an issue if we have something like that in place. Just want to give you a couple figures here to kind of keep in mind. United States population as of today, from the population counter, 315 million approximately. We have a net gain of one person every 15 seconds in this country, and that's from one migrant coming over every 45 seconds. You've got a birth of every 8 seconds and a death every 12 seconds. So you are relying on a small portion of agricultural farmers to provide for a large number of people. And I think it's one of those things where agriculture might be a small pool when it comes to immigration and the effects of that, and all the people combined as far as total immigrants, illegal or whatever you have there. But if we don't deal with our food source, and if we don't deal with our agricultural source first, either through revisiting the H-2A program, I think we'll have issues that affect more people than just maybe those jobs that are lost. Another thing I wanted to mention, you know, a lot of arguments that some people have is that, you know, immigrants and even migrants and people that are trying to become legal here the proper way are taking up jobs in America. And when I look down through the list that's provided, you know, a lot of the jobs that these people entail are construction, agriculture, roofing, bricklaying. They're not our post-secondary education jobs. They're the jobs that a lot of times people don't want to do. And so it's important that we try to support those as we get down through here. One thing that I think going on with the education we talked about, and like you all mentioned, trying to provide that, what's a way, you know, if a lot of times we talked about the hard and the difficulties of farmers to maybe implement an H-2A program. We've got to find some way that they feel that comfort and that stability and encourage them to do that. If there was some way that we could have, you know, the Department of Labor or something to have a streamlined way, a regional streamlined way or something locally in the state to where maybe farmers provide their paperwork, they provide their information through one source and not many, not Department of Homeland Security, not Department of Labor, not this and not that, one area where the farmer has to go to. And then it branches out from there, and maybe throw in something, you know, we don't have traveling possibilities for our H-2A workers right now. They have to stay with their employer. They can't work for somebody else if there's not work available. Try to provide some sort of flexibility option there where maybe me as another farm employer, I can apply through the Department of Labor and maybe use some of those regional workers to try to help try to cut back on that burdensome. What do you all think about that?
I think you make a
Janelle?
really good point as far as the change of hands and the change of position of those workers. One of the farmers that brought it to mind, one of the farmers I was speaking to today, he said, you know, I have had the workers who I have through H-2A, and he said, later on, I'm losing those workers at about a time whenever I'm going to need them. And if he could have them for a more modest amount of time, or maybe someone down the road is in need of work, and then they could trade back and forth in those sections or segments of time. And he had those concerns at that, you know, whatever crop it was that he had in the moment. Now, I also think that it would be an ideal situation if we could perfect E-Verify. And the streamlining, I think that we would all agree if we could streamline a trustworthy source for our farmers. Like I said in my intro, I think that it's important that we look at the concerns of the farmer. And as I surveyed the group of the people that I wanted to speak with and that I've spoke with in the last year, those people are having the same concerns about the problems that they have with worrying about what the implications are for them and for the workers that they have, whether they are consistent workers who they see every year, or whether they are workers that they have to get that are illegal. I have a personal connection with the family member of some immigrant workers. Where I'm in the school system, I see the side effects of those workers being shifted from here and there. And it's not just about the stability that we want to see for our farmers, it's also about the immigrant stability and the fact that some of them want to be legalized here and not necessarily amnesty. They want to become a citizen. And I see how that's impacting those students. Now, I know that follows through from elementary school all the way to college. It's the same issue with the farmer questioning the employee. We can't question students as to their legalization. They can show a desire to be legal, but at that point in time, we can't question them. If our immigrant labor, if they expected some consistency in these programs as well, and they've already developed a relationship with the farmers, obviously, but if they could have a consistency in knowing that E-Verify was something that was going to help them and going to provide a stable job, I think that would be a good option for them and their families, and our farmers in turn would get the same work. It would be consistent. Do you all have ideas about the option of providing a stable, consistent workforce, because that is an issue for it to be stable? Do you see a connection between the E-Verify or some similar system and stable work?
Janella, I do, and I think it also comes back to what Vince was asking about. Do we have a solution to the illegal immigration. And I think what it is there has to be a transition period. Kentucky, as you pointed out, is known for our small farms. And we don't need someone, not all of the farms need someone for all year long. So you have this illegal immigration floating around in our state. And when you talk about E-Verify, you have 19 states that I think that have fully passed laws, and there's still some floating around here and there, a couple dozen that have got immigration policies. And Kentucky's sort of sitting in the wing right now. And I think the question you're asking is a good point, because Kentucky Farm Bureau and Kentucky legislation right now could be one of the leaders. Every state that has done E-Verify, and this is the reason why we should be cautious, have had devastating billion-dollar differences in their economy because it's affected agriculture. You know, Alabama itself had $294 million just in taxes alone, in state taxes. So when I think about this, I'm looking at if we have a state, if we have an H-2A program, or call it something else, and you have this group here, and you say, look, the farmer as well as the employee, let's get together and let's start an establishment. Okay, we know it's wrong, so let's begin to create a system where you're documented, we know about it, you're on a set wage, and then the farmer, let's document, let's keep everything on track, let's keep good records on how we're utilizing and a record-keeping system on this. And I think this is something that could easily be promoted, one through the commissioner's office, one through Farm Bureau, that's creating some kind of record-keeping tracking system that allows us to monitor those employees and also monitor our farmers. I mean, one thing that you have to worry about, and Mike pointed this out when he said construction, you know, if you focus on we're only going to allow illegal immigration to stay here, and you say, okay, I'm not only going to pay them this, then farmers are going to lose them to jobs that will pay them more. Right. And so we have to make sure that we save our farmers at the same time as also addressing the illegal immigration.
Stacey, I'm glad you brought up the patchwork of laws that have been passed across the nation. Right now, we have to ensure that we have a federal mandate on immigration.
That's a good point.
It is a national security issue. It is important that our government know who is here and where they are at. With that being said, we have to ensure that whatever immigration policy comes to our Congress has a ag component to it. That is essential. And with the advocacy of Farm Bureau and rural legislators across the country, and especially in a state like Kentucky that boasts almost 500,000 members, we are a grassroots organization that has the potential to truly push legislators and politicians to pass something that will initially benefit agriculture. And like you said, when we can lose to other industries such as construction, Farm Bureau is looking at, instead of the adverse effect or the adverse effect wage, maybe going to a prevailing wage within agriculture, because sometimes that we have the minimum wage that is required by H-2A is sometimes it's not market based. So we have to make sure that the federal government is instituting this, and that will ensure that there is a consistent immigration policy across the nation, because like you talked about in Alabama with SB 56, that immigration bill alone, like you said, lost millions of dollars in taxes, but there were actual farmers within that state that were disking up their tomato fields because they could not find the labor. So this truly is a federal issue, but I believe that states can be, constructive to it, because we have organizations like Farm Bureau that truly see a need to improve it. And do y'all have any, specifics that you think that Farm Bureau can really stand with, farmers?
I think on the one thing, I completely agree. when you're talking about immigration legislation, it has to be a federal issue, and that's something Representative Tom McKee mentioned as well. It's got to be fair and equal across the board for all states and all situations. The agricultural portion, though, has to be sustainable on the local level, and something you mentioned before. We do have a really good fruit and vegetable farmer in our county, but our main source is tobacco. And something like, when you're looking at issues like that, Representative McKee also mentioned the Arizona-style legislation where, police can just pull somebody over if they suspect that they're an illegal immigrant. We can't have something that way. It's got to be somewhere in the middle. And we talked about the educational and where Farm Bureau can come in. It's got to come on the marketing, educational for the consumer and the general public side. And we've got to have some way to streamline that paperwork from those farmers to where they're not having to go in 10 different directions. Streamline that paperwork, make those H-2A workers or those migrant workers available to more than just one employer so they feel less burdensome and are willing to go out and do it and expand those policies. Janella, you bring excellent points up when you're talking about we've got to somehow combine E-Verify with that educational and that local side, and I think that's something we can do if we look at federal legislation and we really look on the local level, though, providing that education and that marketing through the consumers, to the consumers through Farm Bureau. So I think that would.
Vince makes a really good point about the connection with Farm Bureau and the grassroots connections that we have and the ability to push legislators. And I think that if you combine what you're discussing here about streamlining E-Verify, you make a very good point, and we have the ability to make that change. Our organization does that. While I was in Washington, D.C. this summer with a group of students for a leadership conference, they invite us in. American Farm Bureau sets up a conference for teachers, and we go through and discuss some of the issues that we have at hand, particularly in education, but also with things like immigration, child labor laws, and so on. They mentioned the child labor laws, and we obviously made a difference there. Farm Bureau had a strong, strong voice, and we were speaking up as educators, we were speaking up as farmers, community members, and we got that taken care of for that time. And I think with immigration, I think if like Mike was, you were saying, if we want to streamline E-Verify, Farm Bureau is the place for us to do that because we have the voice. We can get there, we can get it accomplished, we can change the H-2A. If we need to rename it, you were speaking a few minutes ago about if we need to rename it, we'll rename it. And we'll give it the ideal of, or that comfort zone, we'll give a comfort zone to a new system that we can rely on as farmers, as producers. We can make sure that everyone is comfortable with the system on both sides, employee and employer. And I think it's very important that we make that change in a way that is a follow-through from the farmer all the way to the national level, because American Farm Bureau is there for us as we push it through our state. And Kentucky Farm Bureau hears it very well. So do you any of you all have a message that you think would be a good message or a good way to place that to sorry, that's it.
We will now ask for your closing statements. Again, please stand and proceed with your closing statement in voluntary order.
We're gonna do this, guys. It's on. I think we all have, we certainly have a reason to be concerned about immigration because it directs us all at a home plate position. We all have to consider our food source. We all have to consider our dignity and our livelihood and the fact that we are a country that has stood solid on agriculture for so long, and we will stand solid for so much longer, I'm sure of that. But that we will maintain the face of agriculture is what the greatest impact is going to be. Are we going to go from production agriculture that has no tobacco? Are we going to go to a more import, less export? What's going to happen to the traditional crops and the traditional family way and family life of agriculture? Immigration directly impacts all of those things. We have several great ideas as our community and Farm Bureau all have voiced, and that Farm Bureau in our state and in our nation follow through with and listen to. I appreciate all of your all's time tonight.
As you can see tonight, immigration reform is a complex situation. I, however, believe that we talked about some great common sense solutions that can truly change the policies we have in today. And in fact, I know about how Stacy talked about education. We have to educate everyone. Janelle talked about a detrimental policy that could be E-Verify, and Mike talked about a community farmer in Haralson County that desperately needs workers. But today, we definitely realize that immigration reform is essential to the future of agriculture. We have to change our policies for the betterment of tomorrow. Thank you.
First off, I would like to just, be thankful to God for the opportunity that I have to come and do this, that Farm Bureau has provided this platform for us to work together. I'm super fortunate to work on our family farm at home with my family, to do what we enjoy, tend to the land, be shepherds to the animals that are there that have been provided for us. But we have our challenges, and immigration is certainly one of those. It's a big one. It's one that affects all the agriculture industry. I think we talked about the ideas of providing a Farm Bureau supporting that education and that marketing abilities through the general public. Try to get the idea to them, the importance of this labor, the importance of what our products are and how that feeds the nation. If you combine that, Stacy was mentioning before, look at the positives of H2A. Even if we have to rename it, though, let's consider how we can make it more available to the farmers, more positive to the farmers. When Janella mentioned we've got to come up with that connection between E-Verify and just the consistency in the agriculture basis. And then Vince also mentioned on the federal level, we've got to come up with legislation on the federal level that's going to be holistic, include all these states. But in the end, we've got to get back down to the education that Farm Bureau can provide on the local level and how it impacts farmers in our own communities. Thank you all again.
Una vida nueva en agricultura, a new life for agriculture. Farm Bureau's mission includes some words such as issues, concerns, and impact. It is my hope that my colleagues and I were able to create positive discussion for the benefit that Farm Bureau could lean toward good food, immigration policy, as we discuss things such as food security. We talked about e-verification laws and how do we bring this as a federal legislation. See, the Farm Bureau's mission, it's timeless. It's generational. It's something that we want to pass down. I hope that we can create a new life for agriculture that I can hand down to my daughter. Thank you.
Thank you, contestants, for the lively discussion.